I never thought the most humiliating moment of my life would happen at my own grandson's birthday dinner. My name is Madeline Carter. I'm 68 years old. That night, as I stood by the doorway holding a small gift bag with a sweater I'd spent weeks knitting, my daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eyes, waved her hand, and said to a waiter, "Get this pauper away from the table. She doesn't belong here." She had no idea the woman she just humiliated was the founder and CEO of the company she proudly worked for. Before I take you through what happened next, let me ask, where are you watching from? Comment your city or country below so I know how far my story has reached. And if you're new here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you never miss a story like this one. Now, let me tell you how it all started. It had been raining that afternoon. The kind of soft, steady rain that makes the whole city feel quieter somehow. I remember standing in front of Ethan's house with the gift bag tucked under my arm, trying to smooth out my hair with one hand while balancing my umbrella in the other. The house was enormous. 3 stories tall, pale stone walls, manicured hedges lining the walkway. The kind of place you'd see on the cover of a fancy magazine, not a home you'd imagine for a simple family dinner. I smoothed the sleeves of my black wool dress, the best one I owned, saved for church and special occasions, and took a deep breath before pressing the doorbell. My heart was full, thinking of my grandson, Leo, and the little blue sweater I'd knitted for him, just the way he liked. When the door swung open, it wasn't my son who greeted me. It was Vanessa. She stood in the doorway like a model stepping out of a fashion ad. Her makeup flawless, hair pulled into a sleek low bun, and her long red nails tapping the edge of the door as if I had interrupted something important. No, hello. No smile. Just a tilt of her head and a cool, "Oh, you're here." It wasn't the words. It was the way she said them, like I'd wandered into her palace with dirt on my shoes. "I brought something for Leo," I said, holding up the gift bag just a bit. "A sweater I made. He always loved blue." Vanessa didn't budge. Her eyes swept over me head to toe like I was a package delivered to the wrong address. "Ethan's still getting ready," she said, finally stepping aside, just barely. "The other guests are already here." Other guests? My heart sank a little. Ethan had promised a small family dinner. Just him, Vanessa, Leo, and me. Something cozy, he'd said. But as I stepped inside, I felt like I'd walked into a charity ball. The living room glowed under a chandelier that probably cost more than my car. People in fancy evening wear floated around, sipping champagne, their glasses clinking softly over the hum of classical music. I clutched my gift bag tighter, feeling like I'd stumbled into someone else's life. A woman in a shimmering navy dress glanced my way, offering a polite but confused smile. The kind you give someone who clearly doesn't belong. I tried to shrink into the wall, my dress suddenly feeling too plain, too small for this glittering world. Then, like a burst of sunlight, I heard the sweetest sound. "Grandma." Leo came barreling through the crowd, his little arms wide, his face lit up with joy. He crashed into my legs, all 6 years of sugar-fueled energy. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I whispered, bending down to hug him. He smelled like vanilla cake and pure love. "I've got something special for you." I reached for the gift bag, but before I could pull out the sweater, Vanessa's hand landed on Leo's shoulder. "Leo," she said, her voice sharp as a winter wind. "What did we say? Grandma needs to wash her hands before touching you. Go play with your cousins." Leo looked up at her, his little brow furrowed, confused. Then, like the good boy he is, he stepped back and vanished into the crowd. I stood there, holding the sweater to my chest, words stuck in my throat. Dinner came soon after, and I was ushered to the far end of a dining table that stretched on like something out of a castle. Every place setting was perfect. Napkins folded into swans, menus printed on creamy cardstock. I sat next to a man I didn't know, and an empty chair that stayed empty all night. The man barely glanced at me, too busy bragging about his hedge fund and some villa he'd bought in a place called Santorini. Across the table, I caught Ethan's eye. My boy. He gave me a small, sorry smile, but then Vanessa leaned in, whispering something. His jaw tightened and he looked away. Just like that. It was during the main course that Vanessa's voice cut through the chatter like a bell. "So, Madeline," she said, loud enough to hush the table, "are you still working at that little cleaning company?" Heads turned. My cheeks burned. I I own a small business," I said softly, staring at my plate. Vanessa laughed, a sound like ice clinking in a glass. "Oh, how sweet. A business." She turned to the woman next to her and said, as if I were deaf, "She cleans offices. Very humble work." The woman nodded, shifting her chair just a hair away from me, her pearl bracelet tinkling. I tried to eat, but every bite tasted like ash. The talk around me swirled. Fancy vacations, private schools, houses in places I'd never heard of. I sat there, invisible, the gift bag still in my lap. But the moment that broke my heart, it came during dessert. Leo ran to me again, chocolate frosting smeared on his lips, his eyes sparkling. He climbed into my lap and begged, "Grandma, tell me the princess story, the one where she saves herself." It was our story, one I'd spun for him since he was tiny. A tale of a brave girl who built her own ship, fought her own dragons, and never waited for a prince. I smiled, ready to start, but Vanessa shot up, her chair screeching, "Leo, get down this instant. You're getting your clothes dirty." "But Mom, now." She pulled him off my lap, not gently. His little whimper echoed in my chest. Then she turned to me, in front of everyone, and said, "I think it's time for you to leave." I stared at her, my voice barely a whisper. It's Leo's birthday. You're disturbing our family dinner," she said, louder now, her lips curling into something that wasn't a smile. "Security?" There was no security, of course. It was all for show, to make sure everyone at that table knew I didn't belong. And the worst part? No one stopped her. Not a single soul. Not even Ethan. He stood, his face pale, and for a moment I thought he'd speak up. But Vanessa touched his arm and said, "She's embarrassing you, Ethan. She's embarrassing us all." And my boy, he looked down. That's when something inside me cracked. I don't remember standing or grabbing my coat. I don't remember picking up the gift bag I never got to give Leo. All I recall is the chandelier's flicker, the clink of silverware pausing, and the weight of every eye on me as I turned and walked away. No one followed. No one called after me. The door clicked shut behind me, soft as a whisper, locking me out of a world I was never meant to fit into. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was cold. I pulled my coat tight, my hands shaking so bad I fumbled the car key. When I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, I hardly knew myself. My silver hair was frizzy from the drizzle, my lipstick gone from biting my lip. My best dress felt like a costume, like I was playing a part I'd never get right. In that moment, I looked like what Vanessa thought I was, a nobody, a poor old woman who didn't belong. But then, something stirred deep inside me. Because Vanessa didn't know me. None of them did. They didn't know that the woman they'd just shamed, dismissed like some stranger off the street, was the founder and CEO of Carter Dynamics. That is the company she is working so hard to become a manager of. As I sat in my car, the echo of their laughter still ringing in my ears, I made a quiet promise. Vanessa thought she could teach me my place. Tomorrow, I'd show her hers. The sun hadn't even peeked over the horizon when I woke up that morning. Sleep had been a stranger the night before, with Vanessa's sharp voice echoing in my mind like a song you can't shake. The way she'd cut me down at Leo's birthday party, dismissing me like I was some uninvited guest, had left a wound deeper than I'd ever felt. I thought I knew what hurt was, but being pushed out of my own grandson's celebration, treated like I didn't belong, stung in a way that kept me staring at the ceiling all night. Yet, beneath that ache, something else was stirring. A quiet fire. A resolve that felt like steel settling in my bones. By 6:30 a.m., I was standing in the marble lobby of Carter Dynamics, the company I'd poured my heart into for decades. The building always felt different in the early light, calmer, like it was whispering its secrets to me alone. The glass walls caught the gray dawn, and for a moment, I saw my reflection mingled with the city skyline. This was my place, my legacy, built from nothing but grit and a dream. 35 years ago, I walked into this very building with little more than an idea and a stubborn streak. A single mom, scraping by, cleaning offices at night while studying business by day, often with Ethan napping in a rickety crib beside me. Folks said I'd never make it. They were wrong. I built this company with the kind of determination that only comes from being told you're not enough, over and over until you prove them wrong. I stayed out of the spotlight, leading from behind the scenes. Most employees never even saw my face. Vanessa sure hadn't. Miguel, the security guard who'd been with us for 15 years, raised an eyebrow when he saw me. "Mrs. Carter, you're here early." "Couldn't sleep," I said with a small smile. "Figured I'd get a head start." He gave me a knowing nod and opened the gate. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt like a journey to another world. My office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, looked out over the waking city, but I didn't pause to admire the view. I sat at my desk, turned on my computer, and let my fingers hover over the keyboard. Then I typed her name. Vanessa Whitmore Carter. Digital Marketing Division. 19 months on the job. Her file was slick. Fancy degree, shiny job titles, glowing reviews calling her driven and assertive. But I wasn't here for flattery. I dug deeper into the employee complaint system, the kind of place where the truth often hides. What I found made my stomach turn. 3 complaints in the last year, all from folks over 55. Margaret Evans, 61, a marketing veteran, wrote about a meeting where Vanessa mocked her ideas as stuck in the past and hinted she should let the young folks take over. Margaret retired early a month later. Robert Lane, 58, said Vanessa pushed him to work late on her projects, then called him slow and old school when he stood his ground. And then there was Janet Rodriguez, 63, a custodial supervisor with 20 years of loyalty. Vanessa had her moved to the night shift for not jumping at last-minute schedule changes. None of these complaints had reached me. They'd been brushed off, buried. My heart sank, thinking of Janet's words at a company luncheon years ago. Some folks climb by stepping on others, but it always catches up. My phone buzzed. Ethan's name lit up the screen. I let it ring. Instead, I messaged Helen, my assistant of 16 years, asking her to pull records for the digital marketing division. Quietly. Performance reviews, complaints, turnover data, and any emails between Vanessa and the custodial or support staff. I added a list of keywords to flag: outdated, too old, retire, replace, inefficient. Helen's reply was a single thumbs-up emoji. That's the kind of woman she is. No fuss. All action. 10 minutes later, she walked in with a stack of reports and a USB drive. Helen started as a temp with no degree and worked her way up to being my right hand. She didn't ask questions, but her eyes told me she knew something big was brewing. "What am I looking at?" I asked, flipping through the first folder. "Turnovers doubled in that division," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Especially for folks over 50. Exit interviews mention Vanessa by name. Hostile, dismissive, condescending. A few call out age bias. And the emails?" She handed me the USB. "Some of them. They're tough to read." I plugged it in and opened the files. There it was, plain as day. Vanessa's emails mocked older colleagues for using paper agendas, calling them dinosaurs. In one, she wrote about Janet. "Why is she still here? Custodial staff should retire by 60. They move like molasses." I stopped reading, a sharp ache rising in my chest. I'd seen corporate games before, fought them my whole career. But to find this poison in my own company, from someone I'd once welcomed as family, that cut deep. Vanessa hadn't just humiliated me at that dinner. She'd disrespected everyone who'd built this place, the folks who showed up day after day to make Carter Dynamics what it is. I looked at Helen. Her face was steady, but her jaw was tight. "We need to do something," she said. She was right. But this had to be done right. No drama, no gossip, just justice. I wouldn't let Vanessa spin this into a story about a vengeful mother-in-law. This was about integrity, about protecting the people who made this company strong. "Helen," I said, "start with a full review of the digital marketing division. Reach out to everyone over 50 who left in the last year. I want their stories." "And Vanessa?" "Not yet." I stood and walked to the window, the city stretching out below, oblivious to the storm brewing 40 floors up. "She thinks she knows power," I said softly. "But real power doesn't tear people down. It lifts them up." Helen didn't say a word. She didn't need to. We both knew what was coming. I didn't make the decision lightly. All night, I pored over reports, exit interviews, complaints, emails, each one painting a clearer picture of Vanessa's cruelty. She wasn't just sharp-tongued. She was calculated, tearing down anyone who didn't fit her vision of modern. And she'd gotten away with it, unchallenged, because folks were either too scared or too polite to stand up to her. But I wasn't scared. And I was done being polite. Still, I knew confronting her head-on would give her ammunition to twist the story, make it about a bitter mother-in-law out for revenge. So I played it smart. Quiet. I called in Jennifer from HR. She didn't know the full weight of who I was, just saw me as an executive advisor, a shadow in the background. That's how I'd always kept it, leading from the edges. "Jennifer," I said, handing her a thick folder of evidence. "We've got a problem in digital campaigns." She flipped through the pages, her face tightening. "This is a lot. Too much to sweep under the rug," I said. She nodded slowly. "What's the plan?" "Start a department rotation program. Call it a leadership training pilot. Cross-department teamwork, hands-on learning." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "And Vanessa?" "She's first. Move her to cafeteria operations, starting tomorrow." Jennifer hesitated. "She's not going to like this." "She won't know it's from me," I said, my voice steady as stone. That afternoon, Helen brought me more reports. The numbers didn't lie. Vanessa had driven good people out, especially those over 50. Words like humiliating and dismissive littered the exit interviews. Older employees described meetings where their ideas were laughed off, not for being bad, but for coming from folks who don't get modern marketing. A few days later, I slipped into the basement through the service elevator, dressed in a faded blue janitorial polo, cargo pants, and worn sneakers. My silver hair was tucked under a baseball cap, and I carried a mop and clipboard, blending in like I was part of the walls. No one gave me a second glance. The cafeteria was a whirlwind of noise, clanging trays, splashing water, voices bouncing off the tiles. At the far end, Vanessa stood over a sink, scrubbing trays with a fury that could have sparked a fire. Maria rinsed silverware beside her, calm as a summer morning. Janet diced vegetables nearby, her hands steady, her focus unbroken. Vanessa wiped sweat from her brow and muttered, "This is a waste of my time. I've got real skills." Maria shot her a look. "So do we." Vanessa didn't answer, just turned to Luis, who'd walked up with a stack of dishes. "Luis, don't you ever feel like this place is beneath you?" Luis tilted his head. "Number why?" "I don't know," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with disdain. "It just feels like we're all wasting our potential down here. Don't you want something bigger?" Luis shrugged. "Feeding people's pretty big to me." Vanessa scoffed. "Sure, whatever you say." Janet's knife paused just for a moment. "Work's work," she said, not looking up. "Dignity doesn't come from a job title." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "You've probably been doing this forever. No offense, but that sounds like settling." The air in the room shifted, heavy with tension. Vanessa didn't notice, too busy complaining. "Half the folks here don't even speak English, right?" she muttered, loud enough for Maria to hear. Maria stopped rinsing and turned slowly. I speak 4 languages, she said, her voice quiet but sharp. English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, you? Vanessa's face went red, but she said nothing. Maria went back to her work, the silence louder than words. Later, I shuffled by, pretending to check the drains. I overheard Vanessa whispering to another worker. My mother-in-law would love this, probably cackling in her little apartment, thinking this is some big lesson for me, that bitter old woman. My hands tightened on the mop. She still had no idea who I was. By the 3rd day, Vanessa showed up late, her hair unwashed, her cafeteria apron hanging loose. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept. Maria handed her gloves without a word, and Vanessa trudged to the dish station, muttering under her breath. When Luis accidentally bumped her with a tray cart, she snapped, "Watch it. Do you people even look where you're going?" Luis froze. You people? Janet, chopping nearby, set her knife down slow. Vanessa caught her mistake and laughed nervously. I meant the staff. Not, Luis walked away. Janet's silence said more than any words could. That evening, Ethan called. His voice was tight, like he was walking on eggshells. Mom, is everything okay at work? Vanessa's upset. She mentioned a transfer? I asked. Yeah, she's washing dishes, he said, disbelief in his voice. Is that part of some program? It's a learning experience, I said simply. He paused. She thinks she's being targeted, like someone's out to get her. I stayed quiet. She wants to apologize for Leo's party, he added. Thinks maybe this is punishment. I let the silence hang heavy. Mom? I'm busy, Ethan, I said. We'll talk later. The next morning, Vanessa unraveled. A new worker, Grace, a shy young woman, spilled soup on Vanessa's shoes. Cheap flats, not the designer ones she used to wear. Vanessa lost it. Are you blind? She shouted. You think this is okay? You can't even walk straight and they let you work here? The kitchen went still. Maria stepped forward. Vanessa, that's enough. Vanessa whirled on her. Why do you keep defending everyone? You think this is noble? Newsflash. It's not. You're just used to being walked over. Janet stepped up, her voice calm but firm. Leave, she said. Take a break. Come back when you can talk to people like they're human. Vanessa opened her mouth, then stopped. Something in Janet's tone made her think twice. She ripped off her gloves, tossed them in the sink, and stormed out to the loading dock. I followed, quiet as a shadow, and sat beside her on the dock. She stared into the distance, arms crossed. You don't belong here either, she muttered, not looking at me. I can tell, you're too clean. You seem angry, I said softly. She snorted. No kidding. I've been watching you. Her eyes narrowed as she turned to me. You're not really maintenance, are you? I held her gaze. What do you think I am? I don't know. But you ask too many questions to just be mopping floors. I smiled, slow and steady. Maybe I just care about people. Yeah, well, she said, her voice bitter. Nobody cares about me. She stood brushing off her apron. This place is toxic. I don't care what they say. I'm getting out. She walked back inside, leaving me on the dock, the weight of what was coming settling over me. She still didn't know who I was. She thought she could outrun this, twist the truth, point fingers. But the truth has a way of catching up. And soon she'd face it. Not from the safety of a corner office, but right here, where the real work happened. The boardroom felt colder than I remembered, not just the air, but the mood. The spark of ambition that used to hum through these walls was gone, replaced by hushed whispers and uneasy glances. Tension hung heavy, like morning fog over a still lake. I stood just outside the tinted glass doors, listening as Vanessa's voice cut through the room, sharp and sure. The company's image is at risk, she declared, pacing in front of a projector screen flashing charts and emails she'd handpicked to spin her story. Morale's tanking, and this shadowy figure meddling in operations is part of the problem. That shadowy figure? That was me. Through the glass, I watched her strut in her red heels, her sleek bun bobbing with every turn. She thought she owned the room. Vanessa had called this emergency board meeting to restore order, but what she really wanted was control. Full, unchallenged control. In her mind, the only thing standing in her way was some nameless consultant unraveling her plans. She had no idea that consultant was the woman she'd shamed at Leo's birthday party just 2 weeks ago. I straightened my blazer, my heart steady but my resolve like iron. No one in that room knew I was coming. Not even Ethan. Only Arthur Sloan, the chairman and one of the last old-timers who remembered the company's roots, was in on it. That morning, he'd given me a quiet nod and said, "It's time you showed him who built this place." So here I was. Arthur opened the door, soft as a whisper. Every head turned. Vanessa's presentation froze mid-slide. Her confident smile flickered, confusion creeping into her eyes. I stepped inside, slow and deliberate, the way I used to walk into quarterly reviews when I ran this company. A few older board members gasped. Younger ones whispered behind their notepads. Ethan, my Ethan, looked like he'd seen a ghost. I took the seat at the head of the table, the one Vanessa had left open for Arthur, thinking she'd won the day. Instead, she got me. "Good morning," I said, setting a leather folder on the table. "Don't let me stop you." Vanessa forced a laugh, sharp and nervous. "I'm sorry, who are you?" I turned to her, my voice calm. "You can call me Madeline Carter." The room went quiet as a church, then whispers spread like wildfire. Ethan shot to his feet. "Mom?" His voice broke, his eyes darting between me and Vanessa, trying to piece it together. Vanessa's face drained of color like she'd been hit with a bucket of cold water. "No, that's not possible," she stammered. She's not— "Not what, Vanessa?" I asked, my tone even. "Not fit to sit here? Or not worth noticing because I knit sweaters and show up with homemade gifts?" Nobody laughed. Nobody breathed. Vanessa's eyes flicked to Ethan, then the board, searching for an ally. "This is a joke. She doesn't work here. She hasn't been involved in years. She has no authority." Arthur leaned forward, his voice steady as stone. "Actually, Vanessa, she owns the controlling shares. Has for decades." Her head snapped toward him. "What?" I opened my folder and slid a stack of papers across the table. "It's all here," I said. "Share ownership, voting rights, and my legal return as interim CEO. Starting today." "But how? Why wasn't I told?" Vanessa's voice cracked. "You never asked," I said, cutting her off. "You waltzed into this company thinking your last name gave you power. You pushed out the people who built it, disrespected its heart, and humiliated its founder in front of her own family." Vanessa's hands shook as she gripped her chair. "This is ridiculous." I turned to Ethan, who hadn't moved, his face pale. "Ethan," I said, my voice softening, "you welcomed me into your home. You said you were sorry for that night at Leo's party, but then you let her shut me out. You watched her twist our family's legacy, and you stayed quiet. Why?" He looked down, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know what to do." "Now you do." Silence fell heavy. Vanessa stood behind her chair, clutching it like a lifeline. Her confidence was crumbling, but she wasn't done. I saw the spark in her eyes. She was reaching for a counterattack. And there it was. "You want to talk about humiliation?" She snapped, her voice sharp again. "Let's talk about your outdated ideas. The board wanted you gone because you couldn't keep up. You think waving papers makes you a leader? This company needs vision, not some old lady's nostalgia." I smiled. I'd seen this coming. "That's why I brought more than papers," I said, holding up a USB drive. "I brought proof." I plugged it into the projector, and the screen lit up with Vanessa's own words. Emails mocking junior staff. falsified reports to boost her image, plans to cut benefits for longtime employees to fund executive bonuses. Then came the audio. Her voice, cold and cruel, berating a single mom for asking for flex time, laughing about firing older workers for slowing down the brand, even calling a client's kid a glorified germ. The room froze. Ethan sank into his chair, his hands covering his face. Vanessa's voice wavered. You had no right to record me. The company has every right to protect its soul, I said. And as CEO, I had every right to root out the rot. The board stirred, murmurs rising. Arthur spoke up. I move we vote to terminate Vanessa Rhodes for cause. Hands shot up, no hesitation. Vanessa's eyes darted around, desperate. You can't do this. Ethan, say something. Ethan looked up, his face hollow. I'm sorry, he whispered. Vanessa stumbled back, her world unraveling. This is a mistake, she pleaded. Those recordings are out of context. You don't know the pressure I've been under. I've been holding this company together while you were off knitting. She spat the word like it was poison, but it had no bite anymore. The room saw her for what she was. Not a leader, but a bully who'd been caught. Her polished resume, her fake smiles, her secret deals, they all crumbled under the weight of the truth. You held this company together? I said, my voice steady. By tearing down your team? By faking numbers? By treating this place like your personal stage? Arthur's voice cut through. The vote's final. Vanessa Rhodes, your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Security's waiting. She spun to Ethan. Ethan, I'm your wife. He stared at her, his voice barely audible. I loved you. I really did. But I don't know you anymore. Vanessa let out a bitter laugh, panic creeping in. I got you into this company. I brought in investors. Without me, you'd still be coding in your basement. She stepped forward, desperate. You think your mother's your savior? She walked away from this company. She walked away from you. I stood, my voice firm. I stepped back so you could grow, Ethan. So you could lead without my shadow. But I see now that shadow was the only thing keeping people like her from tearing this place apart. Security appeared. 2 calm men in suits standing by the door. Vanessa looked around, finding no one in her corner. Not the executives she'd propped up, not the interns she'd bossed around, not even the assistants she'd treated like dirt. She was alone. She grabbed her tablet, glaring at me one last time. This isn't over, she hissed. I hope it is, I said, meeting her eyes. She stormed out, the door swinging shut behind her. The silence that followed was heavy, like the air after a storm. Arthur turned to the board. I think we can all agree the company's in better hands now. Nods and murmurs filled the room, but my eyes were on Ethan. He sat motionless, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. I walked to his side and knelt beside him. I didn't want it to end like this, he whispered, tears in his eyes. She told me you hated me, that you didn't care. I believed her. I took his hand, my voice soft. You wanted to believe in love. That's not a flaw, Ethan. It's human. He looked at me, eyes red, and I pulled him into a hug. Not for the board, but for us. For all the birthdays I missed, the dinners we never shared, the calls I let go to voicemail while I buried myself in work. I'm still your mom, I said. That'll never change. Word of Vanessa's exit spread like a brush fire. By the time I left the boardroom, whispers filled the halls, eyes wide as employees saw me. Some knew me from old photos in the company archives. Others only knew my name from the founder's bio. But now I was here, walking the halls of the company I'd built, not as a memory, but as a woman stepping back into her legacy. In the elevator to the executive floor, Ethan stood beside me, hands in his pockets, carrying a heaviness I wished I could lift. Mom, he said, his voice low. Can I ever make this right? Making it right isn't about fixing what's gone, I told him. It's about choosing better from here on out. The doors opened and the entire floor was waiting. Interns, managers, tech leads, even old Gus, the janitor who'd been here since the beginning, grinning as he wiped his hands on his vest. Then the clapping started. Soft at first, then growing, not just out of shock, but out of hope, like a weight had been lifted. I raised a hand. Thank you, but I'm not here for applause. I'm here because this company deserves a second chance. We all do. We're going to rebuild trust, respect, the heart of this place. If you're with me, let's start today. Nods spread through the crowd. Some clapped again. A few wiped tears. That afternoon, I held a town hall. Standing on stage, I looked out at a sea of faces. I'm Madeline Carter, I said. I'm not here to dwell on yesterday. I'm here because tomorrow still matters. I spoke of our mistakes, the times we looked away, the harm that grew in the silence. Then I spoke of what we could be, a place where every voice mattered, where respect wasn't just a word, but a promise. The room stood, their applause ringing in my ears. Back in my office, I found traces of the past, a paperweight Ethan made in middle school, a faded photo of the founding team, a chipped mug with my name. I ran my finger over the mug's rim and smiled. This wasn't about settling scores. It was about setting things right. For every woman told she was too old, too soft, too out of place. For every mother pushed aside. For every grandmother called a burden. I was here. I'd survived. And now I'd lead again. Not for power, but to show what it truly means to use it well. The news of Vanessa's ousting spread through Carter Tech like a summer wildfire, but that was just the spark. What followed wasn't just a comeback. It was a reckoning, a reclaiming of something sacred. 2 weeks later, Madeline Carter stood before a sea of reporters, her first time in the spotlight in over a decade. Behind her gleamed the original company logo, the one she'd sketched in her garage alongside her late husband, back when dreams were all they had. Cameras flashed. Microphones stretched toward her, the world hungry to know. How did a woman shamed at her grandson's birthday party rise to take back her throne? With grace, and with a fire that never dimmed. I'm not here to gloat, she told the crowd, her voice steady but warm like a hearth in winter. I'm here because I believe in redemption. Not just for me, but for every woman who's been silenced, pushed aside, or told her time has passed. The next morning, Forbes splashed her story across its cover. The pauper they never should have doubted. The photo showed Madeline in a sharp navy suit, standing tall outside Carter Tech's headquarters, her silver hair catching the light, her eyes steady with quiet strength. The article traced her journey, her grit, her heart, and her plan to make Carter Tech a beacon of fairness, inclusion, and global good. Her inbox overflowed. Offers from investors poured in. Invitations to speak at conferences piled up. Letters arrived from women across the country, daughters, mothers, grandmothers, saying, "You gave me hope again." One note, written in shaky handwriting, read, "I'm 72, and because of you, I'm starting over. Thank you," but not everyone cheered. Vanessa, once the polished face of the company, had vanished from view. Investigations uncovered her trail of financial missteps and rigged internal votes. The SEC opened a probe. Her social media accounts went dark. PR firms turned her away. Recruiters stopped calling. And the deepest cut of all? Ethan filed for divorce. Not out of spite, but because he saw clearly now. Vanessa's ambition had poisoned their marriage and driven a wedge between him and his mother. He won custody of their son, Leo, promising to build a stable home with therapy, humility, and Madeline's steady hand to guide him. Madeline, though, didn't pause to savor the victory. She got to work. She launched the Pauper's Legacy Fund, a foundation to help women over 60 find their footing, whether through jobs, new businesses, or safe places to call home after being cast out by family. Its first gala raised over $2 million, with donations still rolling in. The White House called, inviting her to speak on a panel about women in leadership. Her words lit up social media. They called us burdens, but we're the foundation this world stands on. and we're nowhere near done building. Back at Carter Tech, change was blooming. Madeline reshaped the board, rooting out secrecy and putting ethics first. She launched programs to bring in diverse voices. She personally reached out to employees who'd left under Vanessa's reign, inviting them back. One of them, a young engineer named Felicia, broke down in tears during her rehiring interview. "You're why I got into tech," she told Madeline. "I thought you were gone for good." Madeline just smiled, her eyes crinkling. "I wasn't gone, Felicia. I was waiting for the right time to come back." And that time was now. On her 69th birthday, Carter Tech's top floor glowed with warmth. No cameras, no reporters, just Madeline, Ethan, little Leo, and a handful of loyal employees who'd been with her from the start. A simple cake sat on the table, frosted with 2 words: "Welcome home." That evening, she recorded a message for the world, her voice soft but strong. To every woman who's been told she's too old, too late, or too weak, I see you. I was you. And I'm here to tell you it's never too late to write the ending you deserve. She paused, looking straight into the camera. "Thank you for following my story. If it moved you, tell me where you're watching from. And if you believe in second chances, in justice, in strength, in women rising, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Because more stories like mine are coming." The screen faded to black. But before you turn away, know this. If stories of courage, of standing tall after being knocked down, of proving the doubters wrong resonate with you, then you're in the right place. Support Hidden Family Revenge Stories by liking this video, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell. Because the world needs more tales of powerful comebacks, second chances, and the rise of those who were counted out. The applause had faded, the headlines tucked away in archives, and Madeline Carter sat alone in her cozy study, a cup of chamomile tea warming her hands as rain pattered softly against the windows. Carter Tech was flourishing, her foundation was growing with new funding, and her family was mending, stitch by stitch. Yet a quiet ache lingered in her heart, a question she'd carried for decades, unanswered. Who left her at the children's home when she was just 6 years old? All her life, she'd been told it was a sad accident. A young mother, overwhelmed and alone, who disappeared without a name or a trace. The records were locked away, the story sealed shut. Madeline had stopped asking questions long ago, or so she thought, burying the hurt under years of hard work and love for her own family. But one rainy afternoon, her grandson Leo's innocent voice broke through. "Grandma, who was your mom?" She smiled, brushing his hair back. "A brave woman who gave me life, sweetheart." That night, sleep wouldn't come. Memories flickered like old film reels. The scent of lavender soap, the soft hum of a lullaby, the warmth of arms that once held her tight. And a voice, faint but clear, whispering, "Wait here, honey. I'll be right back." The next morning, Madeline climbed the creaky stairs to the attic, a place she hadn't visited since Ethan was a boy. Dust danced in the sunlight, time suspended in the air. She knelt by an old cedar trunk, her fingers brushing over baby clothes and faded photos until they found something unexpected. An envelope, yellowed with age, addressed to her in careful handwriting. To Madeline. "For when you're strong enough to forgive me." Her hands shook as she opened it. "My darling Madeline, if you're reading this, you've grown into the woman I prayed you'd become. Strong enough to carry pain, gentle enough to forgive it. I was 19 when I had you. The world wasn't kind to girls like me then. My family told me to give you up. I refused. I worked 3 jobs, scraped by. But when you got sick, when I couldn't pay the hospital bills, I fell apart. A woman at the clinic promised help. She said you'd be safe just for a little while. I signed papers I didn't understand. I didn't know they'd take you forever. When I came back, you were gone. Transferred. Adopted. Your records sealed. They told me to stay away or face jail. I spent my life baking birthday cakes with your name in my heart, alone. I followed your success from a distance, clipping every article, saving every picture. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped hoping. I'm so sorry. Love forever, Mom. Tears fell slowly at first, then like a dam breaking. For an hour, Madeline sat there, clutching the letter. Not angry, not betrayed, but heavy with a truth she'd waited a lifetime to hear. It wasn't just her mother's story. It was the story of countless women, their choices stolen by a world that didn't care. The next morning, she called a press conference, but this wasn't about business or Carter tech. It was personal. Standing before the microphones, her voice steady, she spoke from the heart. To the mothers who lost their daughters, to the daughters who never got to ask why, to the women whose stories were erased. This is for you. She announced the Found Project, a new arm of the Pauper's Legacy Fund, dedicated to women separated from their children by forced adoptions, poverty, or broken systems. It offered counseling, legal aid, and, for those ready, a path to reconnect. Not every story would end in a reunion, but every story deserved a voice. Within 3 months, the Found Project received over 4,000 letters. One, in trembling handwriting, read, "I was 16 when they took my son. They said I wasn't good enough, but I never forgot his eyes. Thank you for giving me hope he might know I never gave up." Madeline answered every letter herself that first month, then built a team of therapists, researchers, and volunteers to carry the work forward. A documentary crew reached out and she agreed, but only if the focus stayed on the women, not her. A year later, The Found premiered at Sundance, winning the Audience Choice Award. On stage, when asked how it felt to turn her pain into purpose, Madeline's answer was simple. Some stories don't end. They just wait for the right heart to read them. Back home, she sat in her study, her mother's letter now framed above her desk, a quiet reminder of where she'd come from. She turned to the camera, recording a message for the world. If you've ever carried a question without an answer, if you've ever felt alone in your story, hear this. You're not alone. We don't always find closure, but we can write something beautiful with what we have left. She smiled, her eyes warm. This is Hidden Family Revenge Stories. Thank you for walking this road with me. If this moved you, tell me where you're watching from. Like, subscribe and ring the bell to keep these stories alive. 3 months after Madeline Carter stepped back into the spotlight at Carter Tech, she found herself with a rare gift. A quiet Sunday afternoon. No meetings, no plans. Something tugged at her heart, pulling her to the attic of the old family home, the one she'd reclaimed after years of it sitting empty. She hadn't been up there since the estate was signed back to her, but that day, the pull was too strong to ignore. The attic smelled of cedar and thyme, dust floating in the soft light filtering through a small window. Memories hung in the air like ghosts. Madeline wasn't sure what she was looking for, just that some wounds call you back to where they began. In a corner inside a cracked cedar chest, she spotted a faded envelope. Her breath caught when she saw the handwriting. It was her mother's. The letter was dated 42 years ago, the ink smudged in places, but still clear enough to read. To whoever finds this, maybe Madeline, I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough to keep you. Shame made my choices for me. By the time I understood what I'd lost, you were already someone else's to love. Madeline sank to the dusty floor, the letter trembling in her hands. Her mother had never spoken of regret, never reached out. Yet here was the truth, written in ink, proof that love had been there, buried under fear, judgment, and pain passed down through generations. What came next was a quiet unraveling and a slow, tender rebuilding. Each night, Madeline sat at her desk writing letters to her mother. Not to mail, but to heal. She poured out her forgiveness, her victories, her heartaches, her hopes. Page by page, she let go of the weight she'd carried for decades. Weeks later, she shared her story in an anonymous op-ed, "The Letter I Found in the Attic," published in a major newspaper. It struck a chord, spreading like wildfire. Thousands of women wrote to her, their own stories spilling out, of being left behind or leaving others, and the quiet hurt that never quite faded. From that response, the Pauper's Legacy Fund birthed the Attic Project, a program offering writing workshops for women over 60 to process their past through storytelling. They gathered to put pen to paper, to share the joys and sorrows they'd carried in silence. At one of those workshops, a woman in her late 70s approached Madeline, her hands shaking as she held a folded letter. "I wrote this 49 years ago," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "But I never had the courage to send it." They stood together, tears falling, two hearts understanding each other without needing more words. By year's end, the Attic Project had spread to 12 cities. Women came not just to write, but to be seen, to finally see themselves, their strength, their stories, their worth. And Madeline, she felt lighter, like a burden had lifted. Not because she'd forgotten her past, but because she'd faced it fully and come out whole.